Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kendra and today I'll be doing my April wrap-up. I ended up reading 10 books in the month of April, which I'm super ecstatic about because in March I only read 5 books. So at the very beginning of the month I didn't read that many books, so towards the end of the month I started picking up momentum and I'm really excited with the books that I did read because I did find some 5-star books that I absolutely loved. So first I'm going to go through all of the reading stats, and like I said, I read 10 books this month, and then that is a total of 2,015 pages. I read 4 physical books and 6 ebooks. I read 6 Kindle Unlimited books, 2 physical ARCs, and then 2 of my own books. I read all female authors, and I read 9 adult books and 1 YA. And then I read 6 romances, 2 thrillers, 1 dystopian, and 1 fantasy. And for the star ratings, I had 0 1 stars, 2 2 stars, 3 3 stars, 2 4 stars, and 3 5 stars. And then I'm going to go in order from my least favorite all the way up to my favorite. So the first book that I want to talk about is Pizza My Heart by Frankie Love. This is the first book in the Way to a Man's Heart series, and I gave this book 2 stars. I read this book for the Smutathon, and this is about Matt. He walks into a pizza shop, and Marabella, she is working behind the counter, and he has an instant attraction to her. He asks her out on a date. They decide to go on a date the next day, and they confess their love to each other. So this was a novella, super short, and I don't understand how you can fall in love with somebody in just one day. Like, that makes absolutely no sense to me. So I hate books that have instant love in it, and this one was way over the top and mega instant love. So I hated this book with a passion, and I will not be continuing reading this series. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Farmer's Daughter by Jessica Cain. I gave this book also 2 stars, and I also read this one for Smutathon. And this book is about Cassie. She just turned 18 and she has a crush on her father's farmhand. On her 18th birthday, she decides that she's going to go over to his house and surprise him with nothing on but a robe. He's totally unsure about this because he is way older than her. So they end up getting into a feud that night. So the next day she's like out in the middle of this like field. They are hiring a new farmhand, so the interviewee comes to the farm, sees her like out in the middle of the field, so he goes out to the field to see what is up with her, and she instantly has this connection to him. And of course the guy that she's had a crush on gets super jealous, and they have this like feuding fight, whatever, and she basically tells them that she wants to be with both of them. So I've heard that Jessica Cain's books are way over the top, and this one definitely was. It had a huge age gap, which I'm fine with age gap, but Cassie, she was super naive and so immature for her age that it just didn't seem feasible for them to be together. And then when she meets this other guy, like instantly she wants to like be with him. That is just so weird to me. I don't know, like I don't understand how you can automatically want to be in a relationship with someone after just meeting them. And then not to mention she was also a virgin, so the first time that she had sex with both of the men at one time, and that's honestly super unrealistic for your first time. And like I said, this book was just way over the top, and I just did not like it at all. And I just felt like this book was just so problematic that I don't think I will be reading any more of her books. The next book that I want to talk about is Theirs for the Night by Katie Roberts. I gave this book 3 stars, and I also read this one for Smutathon. And this one is about Meg. It's her birthday, and her friend decide that they're going to go to the club for her birthday, and she ends up meeting these 2 men on the dance floor, and she decides that she wants to have a one-night stand with these 2 men, so she goes home with them. This book was just okay for me. I just didn't feel like there was that much character development for me to have a connection to these characters. for me to want to continue in this series because it left on a huge cliffhanger, and I felt like if this series was on Kindle Unlimited, maybe I would continue reading it, but it's not, and I just don't see myself paying, I don't know, if it was like $3 or $4 for a novella, so I don't think I'll be continuing in this series either. The next book that I want to talk about is Dr. Baby Daddy by B.B. Hamel. This is the second book in the My Baby Daddy series, and I gave this book 3 stars, and I also read this one for Smudathon. And this is about Gavin. He is a surgeon, and he has new interns coming in to the hospital, and when he meets his new interns, he instantly has an attraction to this girl named Melody, and after their shift they end up going to a bar that is like right across the street, and they end up having a few drinks, and they end up having a one-night stand, and she gets pregnant. So for me, this book was fine, but I just felt like it had way too many similarities to Grey's Anatomy for my liking, and I just felt like it was just a huge knockoff of, you know, that TV series. And I also felt like Gavin was a super alpha male, and I'm really not into that. I like, you know, milder, more alpha males, but this was like to the extreme. Like, I just did not like it at all. So, however, I just did not really care for this one, as well as some of the other books that I did read during Smudathon. The next book that I want to talk about is The Last Affair by Margot Hunt, and I gave this book also 3 stars, and this is the book that we picked for Book Talks After Dark that I do with Shelby at Shelby Taggart Reads, and our guest host for April was Tia from Tia and All the Books. And this is about Nora and Josh. They end up running into each other at a hotel. They're both at like different conferences for their work, and they end up having a one-night stand. Well, they end up wanting to have a relationship with each other, and both of their marriages they're super unhappy in, so they decide that they just want to be together. And then also at the beginning of the book, you find out that Gwen is murdered, and you're basically just trying to figure out who murdered her throughout the book, and you get perspectives from Nora, Gwen, and then also Abby, which is Gwen's daughter, and she ends up seeing Nora and Josh kissing in a parking lot. So that's pretty much the dynamics of the book. For me, when I read this book, I really did not think that it was a thriller at all, and I think that's why I wasn't really liking it. And at the beginning of the book, you already found out who was murdered, so I felt like that part of the thriller aspect was already taken out of the book, and you're just trying to guess who killed her. And there honestly was no twist or turns at all until like the very end of the book, and I just don't like that in thrillers. So I felt like this book was marketed very wrong, and I felt like it should have been marketed more as a family drama with a mystery aspect, and maybe I would have enjoyed it better. But going in knowing it's a thriller was not how I wanted this book to be, so I cannot rate it any higher. So overall, I just was not impressed with this book. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Best Friend Baby Daddy by B.B. Hamel. This is the first book in My Baby Daddy series, and I gave this book 4 stars, and this was another book that I read for Smudathon, and this is about Everest. His dad is sick, and he is wanting to give the family business to one of his sons, and his dad really doesn't want to give the family business to him because he does not have a stable life, unlike his brother that is married and has children. So Everest has the bright idea of marrying his best friend Amy. So I ended up really liking this book. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I really love the tropes of friends to lovers and a fake marriage, so I thought those were done really well, and I really thought the character development of these 2 characters was done really well, and also I really liked the chemistry between the 2 characters. So overall, I thought this book was really good, and if you're looking for a short novella that is friends to lovers and a fake marriage, I recommend picking this one up because it was pretty good. The next book that I'm going to talk about is Carrabelle by Stephanie Garber. This is the first book in the series. This book is about Scarlett and Tella. They've been wanting to go to Carrabelle for many years, and then finally they get an invitation to go, but however, Scarlett is engaged and is about to get married, and she doesn't want to mess that up by going to Carrabelle. And also, Tella is sneaking around with this young boy, and he actually helps them get to Carrabelle. So both of the sisters want to get away from their abusive father, so they both decide to go with the young boy to Carrabelle. And once they get there, Scarlett has to find her sister in order to win the game. So I thought this book was going to be about a secret circus, but it really isn't about that. It's totally different than what I thought, but I really loved the concept of this book. I thought the magic was done really well, and I just had so much fun reading this book, and it really got me in the mood to read more fantasy. And I'm really excited to continue this series and see where else this book goes. And yeah, I'm really excited I ended up picking this book up, and hopefully I can read more fantasy in the future. The next book that I want to talk about is Lumberjack by Jenica Snow. This is the first book in a Real Man series, and I gave this book 5 stars, and I also read this one for Smudathon. And this one is about Jake. He caught his girlfriend sleeping with his best friend, so he decides to go live off the grid, and he becomes a lumberjack. And then you also have Vivian. She recently broke up with her boyfriend, and she decides that she just needs a break from, you know, whatever is going on. So she decides to rent out a cabin for a week out in the middle of nowhere. So once she gets to this cabin, she decides that she's going to go on a hike, and she ends up losing track of where she is, and it's starting to get dark out. So she ends up seeing this other cabin, and she ends up knocking on the door, and it is Jake's cabin. And he told her that she can just stay there for the night because there's a huge storm coming, and they end up having a one-night stand. I honestly loved this book so much, and I was so excited that I just randomly picked it up and read it for Smudathon. I felt like this book had so much development in it, and I was so invested in the characters. I wanted them to be together so much, and it was just an all-out really good book. And even though it was so short, I felt like it read like a full-length novel, and I highly recommend this book if you're looking for a short, steamy novella. The next book that I want to talk about is Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. I gave this book also 5 stars, and this is about Marion and Derek. Their son goes missing, and after a year, he still has not been found. Their marriage is rocky now since going through this tragedy, and as the case goes cold, she ends up hiring a private investigator, and as the private investigator is digging into what happened to her son, she ends up finding out that her husband is having an affair. So first of all, I really love this book, and I want to make a suggestion not to read the synopsis of this book because I feel like it gave too much away, and I'm honestly glad that I did not read the synopsis of the book because I feel like I might not have given this book a high of a rating. But since I didn't read the synopsis, there was just so many twists and turns that I didn't see coming, and that's what I really love in a thriller. So I had so much fun reading this, and I had no idea what actually happened to her son. So this book was just so much fun, and I highly recommend this thriller. And the last book that I want to talk about is Masterclass by Christina Doucher, and this book I also gave 5 stars. This is probably my favorite book of the month, and this one is a dystopian book. Every child's future depends on this standardized test called the quotient or the Q. If you score high, then you go to a top tier school and you have better opportunities in the future, and if you score too low, then you go to a federal boarding school where you are shipped off there and you have fewer opportunities in the future. So this is about Elena. She has 2 daughters, and one of her daughters goes to the Silver Elite School, and her other daughter goes to the Middle Blue School. Elena is also a teacher at the Silver Elite School, and her husband is also involved in the whole education system as well. So each month, the children take the test to see where they are and to reevaluate their Q score. So Elena's younger daughter ends up taking her test and she ends up failing, so she ends up going to the federal boarding school, and Elena just does not want her daughter to go there, so she ends up bombing her teacher's test as well. So she ends up also going to the same school as her daughter to, see what this whole federal boarding school is like. It's definitely not what it seems. So this book was so hard to read at times, and it's crazy how realistic this book could actually be in the world that we live in now. I think that's what's just so scary about dystopian novels, because they could possibly happen to us. I felt like this book was very unique. I've never read anything like this before, and I thought it was just so good. And I just had so many emotions at the end of this book, and also this book is very thought-provoking, and it really makes you think about the future and what this could actually, if this could actually happen to us now. So if you love dystopian, I highly recommend picking this book up because it was so good. So those are all the books that I read in April. Let me know in the comments if you read any of these books, and let me know what you thought of them. And until then, I'll see you in my next video. Bye!